Nepal has a very positive image in Europe. Everybody knows Mount Everest. Everybody thinks of Nepal as a very proud and resilient country that has the highest mountain in the world, that has beautiful temples, a very spiritual country. For 2020, we will be looking, I don't know, we can look at different kinds of events. We might look at music events, we might look at joint hospitality events. I think that remains to be seen. Federalism has the potential to be a great factor for growth and for greater inclusion and greater equity. We promote the UN, the reform of the UN. We also promote the WTO, and we're very much in favour of a rules-based world order. And we see that Nepal is very much in line with this thinking, and therefore we would like to work more together on these things. We believe in the freedom to believe, freedom of religion. But we do not believe we are not proselytizing any religion. Education, health, agriculture, and good governance and democracy. And we continue to work today on those areas. These are our key focal points.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for sparing your valuable time for our media. First of all, I would like to welcome you in also. Your Excellency, my first question is, how do you see being an ambassador fitting into your current lifestyle? It means, what is your mandate in Nepal and what are you doing here now?
Thank you very much for welcoming me to your show. I'm delighted to be here. Well, first of all, I would say that it's a great privilege and also a great responsibility to be the European Union Ambassador to Nepal. I'm here, of course, to promote EU interests and to promote our founding principles. But I'm also here, of course, to foster and promote strong relations with Nepal. In this, my mandate is to engage with the Nepalese authorities, the government, and society in general to work together in Nepal's best interests and also to partner Nepal in the coming years.
Your Excellency, how do you define the current relationship status? It means how Nepal and European Union are working together in this time?
Well, I believe we've been working together much more strongly over the years. The relationship has developed, if anything. We're not new partners. We're partners since 45 years, so we know one another quite well already, I think. The relationship with Nepal began very much, of course, as a development relationship, Nepal being a least developed country. Nepal went through many difficult years. You know this better than I do. You know your own country's history. You've had many years of conflict. You've shown considerable resilience in those years. But I believe Nepal is transitioning out of those years now with the new constitution, with elections in 2017 at central, provincial and local level, with the new status of federalization being introduced, with a new government in place, now not so new, over a year in place, but with the perspective of a 5-year mandate. These are all very positive things and are, I think, helping Nepal transition away from those difficult years of conflict into a new phase of development. And the EU is here very much to partner Nepal along the way, as it has through the other phases of its development.
Madam Ambassador, seeing Nepal's current change, how do you analyze the major priority areas of EU to Nepal, comparing to the now and then?
Well, I think there are many key challenges in Nepal, which were key challenges, I would say, 10, 20, 30 years ago, but still remain key challenges today. Amongst those, I would put education, health, agriculture, and good governance and democracy. And we continue to work today on those areas. These are our key focal points. Why are these key? Well, If we take agriculture, as you know, a large percentage of the population is engaged in agriculture, so this must be key to their livelihoods, and therefore key to the production of the country and the prosperity of the country. Education, half of your population is under 25. They need to be educated. The more educated they are, the better standards of living that they will have, the better they will be able to fully develop their own skills and fully live their lives. Health, well, I think that goes without saying. Without health, nothing is possible. You have a very high rate of stunting and malnutrition in certain parts of the country still. And democracy, well, as you know, you're emerging out of a conflict where there was no consensus in the country in which direction to go. Now you have a government in place, a strong government in place. You have federalisation as your template, your model for how you want to have what the model of your country's governance should be. And you have a constitution which promotes inclusivity and gender equality. These are all very, very good things, and they're things that are relatively new in the history, if you look at the long history of Nepal, are very new indeed. So what's the difference? I would say these are big differences between then and now. And of course, always when you're talking about then, you have to say, when was then? But even the then of 20 years ago is very different of the now of today, I would say. We're still working on the same areas. I think we've made progress over the years, for example, in education. And I think over the years, certain progress has been noted. For example, there's greater access of both boys and girls in primary school. I think it's almost parity now. This was not the case a number of years ago. More children are staying in school. This is also very important. However, there are still challenges. That doesn't mean we can stop. We have to look at the quality of the curriculum, keeping children in school longer so that they acquire more skills, quality of teaching, standards of teaching, and examination and certification of results and these kind of things. And we work together with the government in the school sector development plan and with other partners to work in this direction. On nutrition, on health, for example, we've been working with UNICEF and with the government here, the SUN programme. And this also has shown great benefits. Stunting rates have reduced, but they haven't been eliminated. And the general overall nutrition has improved among young women and children. Particularly women giving birth to babies now have access to weighing and measuring tools of the babies so that they know very quickly if they're underweight or undernourished. And they're educated as to the kind of all-round nutrition that children need to grow. And I see it's very interesting when I go to see some of our projects in rural areas now, for example. I see some of the young children are taller than the parents now, so even in one generation, you can see in 10, 15 years that the youngest generation, because they were given the right foods at a very young age as infants, and now they are taller than the parents. So this is very good to see, because you can actually, you can see what's the impact of nutrition on the ground in the population. And it's so important when half your population is under 25 to look after that. That's the future of Nepal. It's the present and the future of Nepal.
Your Excellency, Nepal has owned skill and resourceful manpower as well. However, Nepal is still facing employment crisis. In this situation, is EU have any interest to invest in skill development programs for the economic prosperity of Nepal? As you already told that, EU is highly interested to invest on the children.
Yes.
So now it is also the turn of the youth, because there are many youth, so they are traveling to other countries for job and anything. So would you elaborate something on it?
Yes, I think this is one of the key challenges for Nepal, is its high rate of emigration, and it's a difficult question. It's a complex question as well, because you have a great deal of young men, also young women, but mainly young men, leaving to emigrate. And many of them are lowly skilled, and they don't necessarily in the countries are going to gain more skills. It would be obviously more beneficial to keep these young men here, to give them the right skills, and so that they can take up the job opportunities that come up. We are working with the youth of Nepal on technical and vocational education training.
Great.
I'll give you one example. We do vocational training in the hospitality sector, for example, where we train young students in reception work for hotel, in cooking, in portering, in all of the skills for the hospitality industry and tourist industry. I was recently visiting one of our projects in Pokhara, for example, and we had a lunch at the school, and we had all the skills were on show. We were received, we were brought to the restaurant, we were served excellent food, and this is the kind of thing that we are hoping to build on as we see that the government has a priority to make Nepal a more attractive tourist destination and to increase the number of tourists in Visit Nepal 2020, to double the number of tourists, and we think, well then let's try to help the youth develop skills in this area.
It means tourism industry can be the major source for those youths.
It can be one of the sources for those students. That was just one example I gave you. We're also, for example, training youth in agriculture, for example, in the coffee sector, in growing organic coffee, both in the horticultural, the agricultural side of it, of growing the plants, developing organic fertilizer, harvesting and so on, developing different strains, but also adding value to the coffee chain. So not just growing the coffee cherries, but actually roasting, drying, packaging, branding, and getting the best, the high end of the product. Not doing the low level work and then letting somebody else get the high end value, but bringing the whole chain to the people.
I would like to know if you are playing some sort of role to globalize Nepali products.
Yes, as I said, well, perhaps I should say, take the big picture first. The big picture is that the European Union offers to Nepal, in the general system of preferences, of trade preferences, we offer what we call EBA. This is our most favourable trade regime. It's a trade regime called Everything But Arms, EBA, and it allows Nepal to export any product to the whole European market without any tariffs or without any quotas. So they export, and all of the profit goes back to Nepal's producers. So this is our most favourable trade regime. We offer it to least developed countries as a way to incentivise them to grow and to help them and assist them in exporting their products. I think this is a big challenge for Nepal. Of course, it's a wonderful opportunity, but then you have to be growing and exporting in enough volume. When I say growing, I mean in the agriculture sector, and you need to have high quality products, a diversity of products, and volume. And Nepal is coming from, I would say, a low industrial base. It has not been a highly industrialized country. It has not been a major manufacturing country. And of course, your infrastructure, always we come back to infrastructure, makes it very difficult to get products quickly to market and cheaply to market. So these are particular challenges for Nepal, and we are working with Nepal to try to help you to get, how should I put it, get greater benefit from the EBA trade regime.
That's great. And as a diplomat from European Union, how would you suggest on the basis of development of tourism sector in Nepal? Basically, Nepal is celebrating 2020 as a year of tourism. So what kind of event would you like to participate or organize some sort of events like that?
Well, this is something we're thinking about at the moment, and when I say we're thinking about it, because we always have to think in financial cycles, because that's how our programming is done. But we have engaged in the past with the Tourism Board. For example, we did a promotional video together with them on tourism in Nepal. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's very nice. It was produced locally here, and I think gave a very positive image of the beautiful scenery in Nepal, the spirituality, the temples, the music, the people, the great diversity of landscape that you have here. So I think that was one thing that we did that was very positive with the Tourist Board. In the future, for 2020, we will be looking, I don't know, we can look at different kinds of events. We might look at music events. We might look at joint hospitality events. I think that remains to be seen. It's something that we have to work with the Tourist Board and with the government.
That's great. And what is your assumption that where Nepal will be in the next decade? Within 10 years, where will we see Nepal?
Well, I haven't got a crystal ball, but it's a very good question, because we are coming to the end. I mentioned earlier financial cycles. We're coming to the end of our current programming cycle, which is a 7-year cycle. It'll finish in 2020, so next year. So at the moment, we're planning the new financial cycle, which will be a 7-year cycle. Not quite 10 years, but nearly. So we are looking ahead at where will Nepal be in 10 years or in 7 years or thereabouts, looking into the future. And I think Nepal is in a very, very interesting phase of development as a country. I think an awful lot can happen in 10 years in Nepal. A huge amount can happen in 10 years. And it's for us to be part of that engine that makes that change happen. I think it can be sometimes a little bit overwhelming when you look at all of the things that have to be done in Nepal. I think federalism is a huge project, for example. But this could be a tremendous motor for change in so many different ways, and change for the good. If it's done properly, it can be a huge trigger for both economic growth, both decentralization in terms of the engagement of citizens in Nepal in governance, in assuming responsibility for their own local towns and provinces, in terms of delivering of services and goods locally to people, in bringing up standards in those services and goods. If I take the case of education, where parents know that they can go to their local facility and local elected representatives to improve their education locally of their children. This makes the whole system more accountable and more transparent. I think as well, where people see that services are being provided locally, they can vote with their feet. You know, they can see if one service is not being well provided, that they can become active and have a voice, and that it will be heard locally. Federalisation as a trigger for economic opportunities. Well, of course, as each town grows, it's going to need more housing, more hospitals, more schools. This in itself is a trigger for growth. I've seen that myself, even in my own small country, where we decentralised the civil service. Towns, provincial towns, small little rural towns that nobody had heard of before suddenly became thriving hubs of commerce, and this is very good. So federalism is a motor for growth, as I say, done well. It has to be done in an inclusive way, in a fair and just way, and the provinces and local authorities must be given, of course, the resources to deliver the services which are required of them.
Your Excellency, I would like to request you, if you would like to answer, please answer that. Relating to Nepal's economy, federalism is leading towards the financial bankruptcy in our country. How would you comment? It means finance.
Which is federalism? Yes.
Federalism is leading towards the bankruptcy. It means Nepal's economical condition is not fit for the federalism. It is the voice coming out these days. How would you comment on this?
Well, first of all, I'm not an economist. So I don't have any precious insights to offer in that respect.
And the next question is, what are the key challenges that you have faced working as an ambassador to Nepal? I think it's too personal. What else?
The key challenges. Well, I think any new country is a key challenge. In my previous posting in Brussels, I was head of South Asia in the External Action Service. So I dealt with India, Bangladesh, Nepal and Bhutan. But of course, it's one thing to deal with a country when I'm sitting in Europe. It's quite another thing to be dealing with a country when I'm here in Kathmandu. First of all, I think some of the key challenges I faced is getting to know the country, just simply getting to know the country. The country is not Kathmandu. Kathmandu is the capital, of course, and it's a beautiful city. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an amazing place. It has so many different facets to it, not least the people. But of course, it's not all of Nepal. So one of the first things I did when I came was to try to see beyond Kathmandu, and I tried to visit other provinces. So I have visited, just as some examples, I've been to Pokhara, I've been to Lumbini, I've been to Nawalparazi, to Nepalganj, to Surkhet, to Rapti Sonari, to Kalikot in Karnali province. I haven't been everywhere. I haven't been to all of the provinces yet, but I intend to travel widely and to see our projects throughout the country. And this has shown me not my challenges, well, it turns into my challenge, but actually the challenges for Nepal, because the diversity and the difference of the conditions, living conditions of people, when you look at Karnali province and you compare it to Kathmandu, for example, they are very, very different. The challenges they face of infrastructure, of inaccessibility, remoteness, these make living conditions very difficult. And bring with it great restrictions on what kind of economic activities they can engage in. So that was a very educational thing to travel and just visit other people and to listen to them and hear their concerns. In Rapti Sonari, for example, I visited an area where we are engaged in a project there of helping the people deal with flooding, for example. So we've built hand pumps, because when the floods come in, they can't get at the clean water. Clean water submerged. So we built hand pumps so they can pump up clean water. This eliminates the spread of disease. We had lifeboats for them. We've built shelters so that they can be sheltered from the flood, less drowning and less accidents, fewer accidents and less spread of disease. I visited our coffee plantations, for example, in Kavre and in Pokhara, where we have organic coffee cooperatives. And we've set up some retail outlets as well. And these are young and not so young farmers trying to make a living, and we offer them training and advice in organic farming and how to, as I said, add value by helping them develop the product beyond just the harvesting of the coffee cherries, and bring it right up to the roasting and branding. And the coffee then is sold here in Kathmandu and in Bairawa and in Korea and in Germany. And this year, for every year, we have Europe Day. It's the 9th of May. And throughout all our delegations, we have 140 delegations throughout the world, we celebrate Europe Day. And it's also celebrated in Brussels. And in Brussels, the External Action Service has open doors, and we bring the public in. So we sent them sachets of organic Himalayan Nepal-grown coffee. And it went down a treat. Everybody loved this because Nepal has a very positive image in Europe. Everybody knows Mount Everest. Everybody thinks of Nepal as a very proud and resilient country that has the highest mountain in the world, that has beautiful temples, a very spiritual country. And so a product from Nepal is a special product. So the branding is high Himalaya, organic, coffee from Nepal.
Your Excellency, if we talk about Nepal,
Yes.
When you are up in another country, you would be in the future also. And what would be the best thing that you will miss from Nepal?
Oh,
If you would have to tell only one thing, what would be that?
well, that's the difficulty, is just choosing one thing. I think it's a very difficult question. There are so many things. I think, first of all, the equanimity and the tremendous welcome with which I've been received here. I would say the greatest asset of Nepal is its people. I would miss its people.
That's very nice. Your Excellency, I don't know, you have gone through the current Media Act of Nepal. In fact, Europe is highly, we all respect European policy on freedom of press. And how would you comment on the current Media Act of Nepal?
Well, I think it's extremely important that media have the freedom to express, first of all, to examine the reality of action on the ground, to look at policy, to look at programs, and to speak freely as to their evaluation of them. I think restrictions on media, unnecessary restrictions on media, stifle the voice of the freedom of the press. As you know, the European Union speaks very strongly on the freedom of expression. It's a human right, and one that we defend very strongly. So I think the media needs to be free. It's the voice of the people, and it should be free to reflect people's opinions.
Your Excellency, it is my last question for you. That EU has been strongly criticized for some sort of actions in Nepal. Basically, the comment over the ethnic and indigenous people, and so on. And currently, people also blame that. It's not a proven fact, but people blame that Christian faith organizations, faith-based organizations, are promoted by European Union in Nepal. How would you comment?
Well, first of all, your first question, I think, relates back to the election observation mission, yes. Where there was a recommendation, yes. in the report on Indigenous people. I should tell you, first of all, the election observation mission has an entirely separate mandate to mine. This is the case all around the world, because they have to be independent. They're not affiliated to the delegation. But we were invited here by the government of Nepal to participate in these elections, and all election observation missions come up with their recommendations independently. They wouldn't be of any value if they weren't independent. Now, there will always be recommendations that are more popular than other recommendations. That's the nature of things. But I think what is most important to bear in mind is the EU came here to do election observation very much in a spirit of friendship and partnership with the government of Nepal. It was done impartially, and the recommendations were issued impartially. They are, of course, always only recommendations. They're in no way prescriptive. It's entirely for the government to decide what they wish to implement. And I think and I've said this before, I think it's a measure of the maturity of the relationship between the European Union and the Nepali government that we have overcome that incident, and we continue to work closely together on many issues, including on elections, by the way. We are still participating in the election support programme.
Of course.
I would also point out that even since that incident, our relations with Nepal have been enhanced. We will now have annual consultations. I look forward to inviting my colleagues in Brussels here for a joint commission later this year, hopefully in November. Date have yet to be confirmed. But we have agreed to work much more closely together and in a more political partnership in the future. When I say a political partnership with Nepal, I mean that we would like to work more with Nepal on the global stage, working together on global challenges like climate change, like environment, like human rights, and many of the other cross-cutting issues which are affecting us globally. We very much are in favour in the European Union of a multilateral system. We promote the UN, the reform of the UN. We also promote the WTO, and we're very much in favour of a rules-based world order. And we see that Nepal is very much in line with this thinking, and therefore we would like to work more together on these things. The second part of your question.
That was, is European Union directly or indirectly promoting Christian faith organizations in Nepal that are engaged in converting like these activities in Nepal?
Well, that's a very simple question. The answer is no. No, we're not. We're not supporting proselytization. We support freedom of religion as we support freedom of expression.